If your car's mileage has quietly dropped over the last few months and you've started noticing rough idling, hard starts, or a mechanic mentioning something about corroded fuel lines, you're not imagining it. And you're also not alone. Millions of vehicle owners across India are saying the same thing. But here's what makes this story strange: the government isn't just ignoring the complaints, it's actively pushing back against them. So, today, let's actually understand what E20 fuel is, why it exists, why the anger is real, and why, despite all of it, nobody in power is even considering a rollback. Let's start with the basics. E20 simply means petrol that contains 20% ethanol and 80% regular petrol. Ethanol here is a plant based alcohol made mostly from sugarcane and increasingly from grains like maize and rice. It's not a new idea. India began testing ethanol blending all the way back in 2001 and formally launched the ethanol blended petrol program in 2003. For almost 2 decades, this moved slowly, blending stayed in single digits, and almost nobody noticed it happening. What changed everything is the speed of the last few years. India had originally set a target of reaching 20% blending by 2030. Instead, it got there by the middle of 2025, 5 years early, and by April of this year, 2026, E20 became the default fuel at nearly every petrol pump in the country. Pure petrol or the older, lower blend versions became almost impossible to find. Now, here's the problem nobody planned properly for. Only vehicles manufactured after March 2023 were officially certified to run on E20 without issues. Every vehicle sold before that, and we're talking about a genuinely massive number of cars, motorbikes, scooters, even generators and water pumps, was designed for older, lower ethanol fuel. So, when the rollout hit full speed, it didn't gradually phase in. It landed all at once on a fleet that was never built for it. And ethanol behaves very differently from pure petrol inside an engine. It absorbs moisture from the air far more easily. Over time, that moisture builds up inside metal tanks and fuel lines, and it can trigger corrosion, especially in older components that weren't made with ethanol resistant rubber and seals. Ethanol also carries less energy per liter than petrol does. That means for the same amount of power, your engine has to burn a bit more fuel. Multiply that across every drive, every week, for months, and it adds up to a mileage drop that people genuinely feel in their wallets. So, how big is that drop really? Here's where the numbers start disagreeing with each other. The government's own position, stated to Parliament, is that mileage drops by roughly 1 to 2% in newer vehicles and up to around 6% in older ones. That sounds manageable. But independent surveys tell a very different story. One nationwide survey of over 36,000 vehicle owners found that a clear majority opposed the nationwide rollout entirely, with a large share explicitly demanding it be withdrawn. Other surveys found that close to half of older vehicle owners reported a noticeable mileage decline, and roughly a quarter reported unusual wear and tear requiring repairs. Some individual owners online have reported mileage drops as high as 20 to 30%, particularly in carbureted engines and vehicles with plastic or rubber components that were never ethanol resistant to begin with. Then the fear escalated further. An Indian insurer suggested that engine damage caused by using the wrong fuel for a vehicle might not be covered under insurance. That single statement spread panic. If your 15-year-old scooter has a corroded fuel line from ethanol exposure, and your insurer treats that as your own fault for using the wrong fuel, even though you had no other option at the pump, that's a genuinely frightening position to be in. So, what has the government actually done in response to all this anger? A few things. First, officials clarified that E20 use does not, in fact, invalidate insurance and that this claim was based on misinformation. Second, the Ministry of Petroleum stated that its internal studies found no evidence of major engine damage or performance loss tied to E20. Third, and this is the part that really lit up social media, the Union Minister for Road Transport publicly challenged critics to produce even a single verified case of E20 causing vehicle damage and directly blamed what he called a petrol lobby for spreading fear to protect its own market share. The Supreme Court also dismissed a legal petition challenging the entire ethanol blending policy, which effectively closed off the legal route for reversing it. Notice what's happening here. The government isn't denying that mileage dropped slightly. It has admitted that much in writing to Parliament. What it's refusing to accept is that the fuel is damaging engines at scale, and it has released no detailed independent test data to prove that claim either way. So we are left with a strange standoff: an official mileage loss figure that sounds small, a set of consumer surveys reporting something much larger, and no publicly available third party testing to settle which one is closer to the truth. Now let's talk about why the government has zero appetite for a rollback, because this is really the heart of the story. Ethanol blending isn't just an environmental policy. It's become one of the most important financial lifelines for India's sugar industry. Over the past decade, sugar mills have earned more than 1 lakh 29,000 crore rupees from ethanol sales alone. Farmers across sugarcane and increasingly maize and rice have received over 1 lakh 58,000 crore rupees in income tied directly to this program. The government has its own favorite phrase for this, turning farmers from Annadata, providers of food, into Urjadata, providers of energy. On top of that, the government claims the program has saved the country more than 1 lakh 40,000 crore rupees in foreign exchange by cutting how much crude oil India needs to import. Here's the part that rarely gets said directly. The price India pays for ethanol isn't set by market competition. It's fixed by the government per liter separately for sugarcane based and grain based ethanol, and oil companies are contractually obligated to buy fixed volumes regardless of whether demand justifies it. Distilleries have already been built, expanded, and financed based on the assumption that this demand will keep growing. In other words, an entire industry's business model is now built around guaranteed government purchase orders. Walking that back wouldn't just annoy farmers, it would strand billions of rupees in industrial capacity and destabilize an income stream that political parties have spent years promising to protect, particularly in states like Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Karnataka, where sugarcane politics and general politics are deeply intertwined. So, when you put it all together, the real conflict isn't actually about whether ethanol slightly reduces mileage. Almost everyone, including the government, agrees that it does at least a little. The real conflict is about who absorbs the cost of that transition. Right now, that cost is landing almost entirely on individual vehicle owners, particularly people driving older, cheaper vehicles who can't simply go out and buy a brand new flex fuel car. Meanwhile, the financial upside is landing on sugar mills, distilleries, and farmers who are promised and are receiving guaranteed income. And there's a wider risk building underneath all of this that barely makes headlines. Growing demand for ethanol has already pulled maize away from the poultry and livestock industry, pushing feed prices higher. Some regions have gone from exporting maize to needing to import it. Sugarcane, meanwhile, is an extremely thirsty crop, and it's expanding in some of the most water stressed farming regions in the country, places where groundwater is already being pumped from dangerous depths. None of that shows up on your fuel receipt, but it's part of the same chain that keeps this policy locked in place. So, why won't the government take E20 back even after so much criticism? Not because the complaints are fake and not because officials are unaware of them. It's because reversing course would mean unwinding years of fixed contracts, guaranteed farmer income, and a foreign exchange savings story that the government has built real political capital on. Rolling it back isn't just a fuel decision anymore, it's a financial and political one wrapped inside a fuel decision. And that's exactly why the debate keeps circling around the same narrow question: does E20 damage engines? Because that's a question the government can keep sounding uncertain about rather than the far more uncomfortable one underneath it. Who was always going to end up paying for this transition? And was anyone but the vehicle owner ever going to be asked to share that cost?